All right, everybody. I am back. Good to be back. Good to be back. I actually want to stay with some college football. And it's wild because I don't ever remember this much college football going on this late in the calendar. Yet here we are in mid-February, and we basically have a full 40, 45 minutes of college football talk on the Air Tour Sports Podcast. But that's where we are, and there was another piece of news that happened over the weekend, and it's funny, right, because I don't do a lot of transactional stuff on this show. I mean, I don't do a lot of coordinators are leaving here, and this defensive backs coach leaves there, and all that good stuff. That's not what I do on this show. It's just not what we do. But something happened on Sunday that was so big and so important, and there was so much detail, context, nuance behind it that I do think we have to discuss it here. And that was the news that Josh Gattis, Michigan's offensive coordinator, who just won the Broyles Award as the nation's top assistant coach, announced that he is leaving Michigan to take the offensive coordinator's job at the University of Miami. And I don't normally talk coordinators and this and that and moving to, but I bring it up because I believe that Josh Gattis' decision is a direct reflection of Jim Harbaugh's awkward, bizarre, strange flirtation with the NFL over the last 2 months, month and a half, 6 weeks, whatever it was. I believe this could have been avoided. I believe Jim Harbaugh screwed this up. And now I truly believe that Jim Harbaugh has a huge mess on his hands. I don't believe Josh Gattis is necessarily the last assistant coach to leave. And I do wonder this. Did Jim Harbaugh mess up a really good situation? And was last season officially as good as it gets at Michigan? And it's funny, right? Because when I saw the news on Sunday morning, that was my initial reaction. This was a direct reflection of Jim Harbaugh. Weird flirtation that went on for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. And I had a bunch of Michigan fans tweet at me, "Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Guys leave for jobs all the time. Coaches change jobs all the time." And yeah, like those Michigan fans, they're 100% right. They are 100% right in that analysis. Coaches leave for jobs all the time. Graduate assistants take position jobs. Position coaches take coordinator jobs. Coordinators take head coaching jobs. What almost never happens, though, is a guy the high profile of Josh Gattis leaving for the exact same position at another school. And you know how I know that? We have a fact. Here is the facts on a Broyles Award winner, a guy this high profile, winning the assistant coach of the year in college football, leaving for the same job somewhere else. The Broyles Award was created in 1996. This stat via Chris Vanini of The Athletic. I thought it was really interesting. The Broyles Award was created in 1996. There has only been one time where a guy wins the Broyles Award as the nation's top assistant coach, either an offensive coordinator or a defensive coordinator, and then leaves for the same job at a different school. We've had guys leave for head coaching jobs. We've had guys leave for the NFL. Only one time since the award was created in 1996 has a guy left his job for a parallel job, for the same job at a different school. That was Gene Chizik after he won the Broyles Award, ironically, at Auburn in 2005. He then leaves to take the same position, defensive coordinator at Texas. So to sit here and say that what happened at Michigan is totally normal, it happens all the time, this is the equivalent. It'd be like if it snowed in Arizona today, and you turn on the news, it's usually 100 degrees in Arizona, you turn on the news, and the news said, snow in Arizona. First time since 2005 that we've had snow. First time we've had snow in 17 years. Would you say that's something that happens all the time? Would the news anchor say that's something that happens all the time? Or would you say, no, that's a totally rare abnormality that happens once in a generation, because that's exactly what happened at Michigan on Sunday. And so because of that, I believe that it is a direct reflection of the decision that Jim Harbaugh made over the last month or so. And to be clear, I think every person in life has a decision to do what makes them happy, right? You do what's best for you. Leave jobs, take jobs, leave a relationship if you're unhappy. But what you always have to do is consider the other people around you. And so I don't blame Jim Harbaugh for pursuing NFL jobs. But think about what Jim Harbaugh did in Ann Arbor over the last month. Michigan is coming off its best season probably basically since like 1997 when they win a national championship. Beat Ohio State, win the Big Ten, go to the college football playoff. And as soon as that's done, all the people that helped him make that possible, he just said, yeah, you know what, I appreciate that, but I'm going to go do what's best for me over here. How would you feel if you were part of that? And let me take it a step further. I think it was one thing for Harbaugh early in the process to leak that he was interested in 2 jobs where he had somewhat obvious ties. He had ties to the Bears, the McClaskey family, or however you say it, the ownership group there. He had ties to Vegas and the Raiders. Maybe Mark Davis wants to make a big hire. Okay. I think it's one thing to do that early on in the process, and then it becomes pretty clear that you're not a candidate and it's not going to work out. I think it's another thing to do what Jim Harbaugh did last week. I think it's another thing to very clearly not be in the mix with the Minnesota Vikings, very clearly throw your name in the mix very publicly reach out to the Vikings and express your interest in the beginning of February. And then on top of that, you go to take an interview on National Signing Day. And I know Michigan's class was mostly wrapped up and there wasn't really anybody else to sign. I get all that. But on National Signing Day, imagine being an assistant coach on that staff on National Signing Day. You spent a whole year grinding, working, putting together game plans, coaching your positions, being away from your family, recruiting, getting on the road, sacrificing everything for the good of the program, for the good of the team. Now on National Signing Day, this guy is leaving, and you don't know what's going to happen if he ends up taking that job. I know there were reports that Josh Gattis was going to be the next head coach if Michigan left, but he also sent out there was a tweet from somebody at ESPN named Tom Van Haren that essentially insinuated that Josh Gattis was not happy with the administration, was not happy with a few things, and it sounds like it was far from a done deal that he was definitively going to be the next head coach. So imagine you're Josh Gattis, or imagine you're another assistant coach, and on National Signing Day, you've worked so hard for so long, and your boss decides to leave to interview for another job. And now in the middle of February, when Lincoln Riley, Brian Kelly, Mario, all these guys have been in place for months, there are no good jobs, there is nowhere else to go, you could be out of the job. All it took for potentially the entire Michigan coaching staff to be out of jobs here in mid-February, all it potentially took was the Minnesota Vikings saying yes. The Minnesota Vikings saying, you know what? Jim Harbaugh, you are our guy. Come be the Minnesota Vikings head coach, because it was clear that Jim Harbaugh wanted that job. And so now, in the middle of February, you're scrambling for a job. Would you be pissed off if you were Josh Gattis? Would you be pissed off if you were one of those assistant coaches? Because I know I would be. And especially on National Signing Day, I know that the recruiting class was mostly locked up. But at the same time, you don't think those assistant coaches were getting calls from parents? You don't think those assistant coaches were getting calls from players? You don't think those assistant coaches were getting calls from 2023 and 2024 recruits asking what the heck was going on? Because I know for a fact that they were. And so to me, this is all about how Jim Harbaugh's acted and what I was told and what I was texted by a source that I trust, and you guys know darn well. I've been basically right on everything Michigan related since this show started. I have some really good contacts in the state of Michigan. I told you in the Mel Tucker stuff, 4 weeks before Mel Tucker, anyone talked about that extension. I told you Mel Tucker's going to make stupid money because Michigan State is not losing this guy like they lost Nick Saban 30 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever it was. I told you that was happening weeks ago. And I'm telling you right now, I got two texts actually, from 2 people that I trust. Josh Gattis might not be the last one to leave. All those other guys on that staff that were left in the lurch, I think they're starting to look around and say, you know what? This guy has no loyalty to me. Why should I have loyalty to him? And it just takes me to the bigger picture at Michigan overall as we start to wrap this conversation. And it takes me to something my radio partner on Saturdays, Jason Martin, said to me on Saturday night, and I thought it was a great point by Jason. And Jason said, have you ever seen a guy have better PR, handle the PR side of a job better in a season, and then immediately ruin it in the offseason? I tweeted it the other day. I tweeted it on Sunday. This is basically like that movie of Mice and Men, or that book of Mice and Men. I think it was a book and then a movie. I don't even know. Remember, there's Lenny, and he's this big, strong guy, and he's got this little mouse, and he loves his little mouse, and then something happens, he squeezes the little mouse's head, and then everything he loves is dead in his hands, blood everywhere. That's basically Jim Harbaugh. That's basically Jim Harbaugh. Think about it. He is coming off a season in which on the field, there's no question that he had the most success that he ever had. 12-1 regular season, beat Ohio State, go to the college football playoff. Yeah, you lose to Georgia, but Georgia was awesome. On top of that, there was the narrative beyond the narrative. The narrative of, well, he took a massive pay cut to stay. And then they offered him more money and incentives. They didn't really offer him, but it was part of his deal. He gets a bunch of money and incentives, and he gives it right back to the university. And for like a 1-month period there, Jim Harbaugh was actually a sympathetic figure. Jim Harbaugh was like, we actually like this guy. Look at this guy. He's giving money back. He's this, he's that. And then the offseason comes. And he butchers everything. He butchers everything. He butchers everything in the perspective that he basically says, like I said earlier, yeah, I appreciate all your guys' hard work, but I'm going to go do what's best for me now, whatever. And now we have a situation at Michigan where it is now the middle of February. He has to replace his defensive coordinator, Mike McDonald, who left to go back to the NFL. Can't blame him there. That was a great opportunity. Go back to the NFL, be the Ravens' defensive coordinator. Now he has to replace his offensive coordinator in the middle of February as well. And so to me, I sit there and I say, I think this could have been avoided. I think if he had just treated people better, I think if he had just basically said after the initial push between the Raiders and the Bears, okay, this NFL thing isn't for me. I think if he hadn't gone to interview with the Vikings on National Signing Day, it could have been different. Instead, Jim Harbaugh is in a mess that he completely created on his own. And I'll say this as I wrap on Michigan. On Friday's show, I tried to make the argument, okay, Jim Harbaugh is back. What does the future of Michigan look like? But I think with the Josh Gattis news, with the fact that I have 2 texts in my phone right now confirming that other assistant coaches are looking to leave, I really do wonder, was that night in Ann Arbor where he beat Ohio State, was the night a week later when he beat Iowa to win the Big Ten, is that as good as it will ever get for Jim Harbaugh at Michigan? Because I'm starting to think that it just might be. I'm starting to think that he screwed this thing up really, really.